Anthrocon released their new parade standards for fursuits, and it's an absolute mess on social media right now. Enough of a mess to compel me to end my YouTube break early to talk about it. So, if y'all don't know, Anthrocon's upper staff must have seen FWA's Line app blunder take the top spot for most poorly implemented FurryCon policy change in recent memory and said, "Here, hold my beer." First of all, for those that aren't terminally online and haven't seen it yet, Anthrocon has been hinting at parade policy changes for a few months now, including a maximum number of suitors allowed as well as a vague hint at costume standards, with no further detail until this most recent update a day before writing this video. Reasons for these changes, according to Anthrocon, involve mostly safety concerns, but there's also a lot of talk about staff utilization concerns with these as well, which has led to these changes. Those standards have finally been elaborated a bit in a recent update, so let's first go over them as they are written, then I'll give y'all my overall thoughts.
I love the young people.
The changes are headlined with a disclaimer: we understand that these changes may not be universally popular, and we want our attendees to know that these decisions were not made lightly, as both the convention and parade reach unprecedented levels of attendance and participation, and it has become necessary to implement these new rules to keep the parade safe for all attendees. I want to highlight something here before I dig into this. These decisions were not made lightly. Fandom, I want y'all to understand perspective here. I get it sucks to be excluded. It hurts. We'll address more of my experience with that later, but from a person who has staffed a con or two and works directly with a lot of senior staff members of smaller conventions, I can assure you this went through many departments and wasn't just a knee-jerk decision without careful consideration on what and how it may affect individuals. Poorly implemented and not the clearest policy, we can have that discussion, but incompetence from volunteers is not up for debate here. This was calculated and strategized by people who have smooth event running in mind, not mustache twirling, profit margins counting detached gremlins who are out to ruin your con specifically. So when criticizing, keep this in mind, and also be the person that keeps your friends in check. You see a moot being disrespectful and mean about this? Tell them. It's understandable to have emotions run high on this, but con volunteers are trying their best, y'all. Anthrocon was in a position where they had to take action, and no matter what, there was going to be a lot of people unhappy about it. But for sake of this video, the focus will be on these main two bullet points. Under parade process, the first sentence of this bullet point states, the number of participants in the parade will be limited, and as such, all participants must be pre-approved. And the parade rules first bullet point reads, all participants must have a costume that is anthropomorphic in nature. But let's go ahead and get to the main point of contention here. Full body fursuits are encouraged. Partial fursuits must incorporate additional elements in addition to a head, hands, and tail. The tail is optional. These are at the wearer's discretion based upon the interpretation of the species and character. Examples include foot paws, sleeves or leggings, or other costume features that define the character. No human skin should be showing. All clothing and costume elements must conform to the Anthrocon standards of conduct. Oh boy, spin the furry wheel of drama, I guess. For the record, I'm not a drama commentary channel, or rant sona is what someone called it, and I'm not one of those, I promise. But what I am is a fur with a lot of thoughts on things that I feel for, and my feelings on this are far more complex than a simple Anthrocon bad or quality control good. Let me go ahead and start with a few little pieces of insight, food for thought if you will. I've made it very clear on this channel that I've not always been blessed with money. This head, in fact, was an 11-year process for me to achieve. And wearing a self-made fursuit comes with the unfortunate social drawbacks if you're not an artist. So my perspective on this is someone who has been on that side of it. That said, those my first fursuit days, God, look at that thing. Looks like a FNAF character cosplaying as Jay Leno. But yeah, understand I'm from a very different generation of furry. I've been in this fandom since 2008 and have been suiting since 2010 and attending cons since MFF that year. One of the biggest rules of fursuiting back then was you generally didn't show skin, or at least you tried your best not to. It wasn't exactly going to get you kicked out or scolded, but it was one of those general unspoken rules of character performance. So also understand this perspective comes from someone who came in right at the end of that generation when partialing was very common, but poodling was still foreign. With that said, I don't usually poodle. I don't like doing it. I have body dysmorphia, and I don't like showing skin when I suit if I can help it. If I'm showing skin in a picture, it's probably by accident, and you probably shouldn't show me it. If I'm gonna desuit, I'm generally gonna do it in private, or at least wait till I'm at the elevator, and certainly not in front of any kids. But this, however, is my own personal ritual. My motto in all of this is the same with any personal thing that you do that does not harm anyone else. You do you, boo-boo. You want a poodle? By all means, go do it. I probably won't, but you have fun. You make of this fandom whatever makes you happy.
Stupid dog!
The controversy with this, for me, begins and ends with the vagueness of the policy. And I know Anthrocon ain't stupid. They have policy writers, social media experts, a PR team. This policy verbiage went through countless people before being published, which tells me more that they knew what they were doing with this policy. But now that we have established that they are indeed doing this with full intention of meaning it, what are they doing? That's where this gets really dicey, because in 2025, there is no standard of what makes a fursuit a fursuit. There really hasn't been one for quite some time, and even back in the day when there kind of was, there really wasn't either. All those unspoken, old school, admittedly gatekeepy rules were just that, unspoken.
Is this easy mode?
The policy Anthrocon has introduced states, partial fursuits must incorporate additional elements in addition to a head, hands, and tail. Examples include foot paws, sleeves or leggings, or other costume features that define the character. No human skin should be showing. So, I'll bite. What do we make of partial suits whose wearer uses skin as part of their suit? For example, a shaved poodle. You know, I thought I actually had more to say here, but I guess that's really it on the defense of poodling in a fursuit parade. I guess my main remaining question for this is, how does this help the concerns with staff accommodation? Doesn't this just make more work for them? I don't know, that just feels like Anthrocon contradicted themselves a little bit. This is where it starts to look more and more like Anthrocon isn't really doing this for safety. This is just more for public image, and we'll talk more about that later. On the contrary though, apparently newer and younger furries are unaware that Under Armour, heat gear, or cooling form-fitted undershirts have kind of been the fursuiting standard for a very long time. I have like a dozen of these, and you can find them at secondhand shops for like $5 a piece. Covers your skin and cools you. So unless the skin is like actually part of your fursuit, which, I mean, kudos to you if that's the case, I don't see it often. But otherwise, I generally don't see the big deal with this rule, and I guess older furs like me can take the blame for not being very good role models for the new generation, huh? Also, let's be frank, Anthrocon had to do something, and no matter what, no one was gonna like it. My first grievance with this, though, is why 2025? Why not literally start working this when attendance was snowballing post-COVID? The 2022 parade only had one working escalator. Why were there not talks to limit size or suit standards starting then? Why wait out another 2 years until you literally had no choice? Until you literally had more fursuiters in the parade than there are words in this entire video? My biggest gripe with the policy, though, to be fair, isn't the policy itself. It's the lack of clarity within it. No definition of what makes a fursuit, no mention of ADA exceptions, no mention of case-by-case bases. So last year's parade was a 5-hour event, from doors opening to the end of the parade. That is a logistical nightmare for any convention. It is in my opinion that a not small part of this policing of suit completeness policy is simply a strategic move from the con to simply shave off turnout, not so much to actually be the suit police. But therein lies the question. Could this policy be a sign of things to come in the future as the fandom grows and becomes less sustainable? Yeah, this is where the policy looks shaky to me. First off, unrelated to poodling, who's determining what defines the minimum requirement for a fursuit? Fursuit pre-mades are often sold in partials with only a head, tail, and paws. So are all those people who made a 4-digit investment now not considered fursuity enough for the fursuit club? Weasel, weasel. This introduces a lot of leeway for classism and, by proxy, elitism to be introduced. So is this like simply making sure someone's not walking into the parade in a literal onesie or cardboard box or plain pup hood with no accompanying anthro attire? For the record, I support pup hoods, but let's be real, by themselves they are not a fursuit. Or is this more like an audition? Guys, auditions are for the dance competition where people are literally being measured on their dance quality against others. You want an audition process for this? Hold a cosplay contest on the schedule. I'm sure that'll go over just as well as the FFFF did. If you know, you know. But for folks who are newer, younger, or developing as suit makers, they should always be allowed if the passion is there, even if the quality isn't yet. But here's the other problem that adds to the whose fursuit is fursuit enough talks. This fursuit policing standard comes with the additional knowledge that Anthrocon is adding a number cap for the parade. That alone tells me that it's going to be more than just the obvious low-effort stuff getting barred from the parade, and that just feels wrong, man. I get the whole take pride in your appearance and your character argument, like the parade is an event to entertain the public, not an exclusive club showcase of fursuit owners. It's an exhibition of creativity and personal expression. The parade to me has always been about creative expression, and creative expression is what it should remain. There should never be policing of suit quality, but in my opinion, this opens up the potential for that to happen down the road. The parade should not come with an entrance fee equal to the cost of entering a vehicle into a NASCAR race, period. But I did watch last year's parade before making this video, and my hand count of folks that were in the parade with no head, an incomplete head, non-furry cosplays, or having less than a head, tail, and paws at minimum was somewhere in the low 200s barring human error. Parents, obvious handlers, and ADA were not counted in this, but that's about 5% of the entire parade population. Just leave those out and you'll free up a lot of space, but unfortunately for what Anthrocon wants, it's simply not enough. There were 3,371 people in the parade last year, and this only knocks it down to about 3,100. And I could speculate that Anthrocon probably has a cap lower than that in mind. But if you were to remove every single poodler or person who had skin showing intentionally in the parade last year, you would cut probably about 35% of the parade. It was a lot of poodling. You are beautiful. Now, there have been a lot of ableism claims about this, but on these, I cannot speak on behalf of anyone's level of ability. So if I'm just straight up off on this, then I'll take the L. But heat exhaustion concerns are not new, and have always been an accepted risk of wearing a fursuit, especially at Anthrocon in the ass middle of summer. And this is Anthrocon's main talking point in this policy update, cited as safety. I myself am not disabled apart from very mild asthma, but I can say that concerns of heat exhaustion are not exacerbated at all by covering my skin with a cooling vest or spandex, or at least not exacerbated in a way that wearing a giant weasel mask on my head doesn't already run an inherent risk of. But again, I cannot speak on anyone's ability or lack thereof. Like, there are people whose bodies literally cannot regulate body temperature, or people who take medications that cause the body to heat up, which is why I've invited on Cringe McGee to offer their input as well.
My name is Cringe Raccoon. I'm cringe_McGee_raccoon on Instagram, and that's basically it.
So do you, or did you, intend on going to Anthrocon this year?
I've never been to Anthrocon before, and I was not planning to go this year.
What are your immediate thoughts on the new Anthrocon parade costume policy?
My immediate thoughts, to be honest, about the Anthrocon parade costume policy is that it's going to be pretty hot. It's going to be pretty physically challenging.
Do you feel the new policy is ableist, and if so, how?
The new policy feels pretty ableist in my opinion, just based on the fact that it's going to take a lot of physical exertion to be in the parade in the first place. And a lot of us just can't do that.
Is there any concern with suitors in the middle of the summer that you feel Poodling provides assistance for?
Fursuiting is a lot of physical exertion, even if you're just walking, and the temperature around you really matters. That's why cons are always cold. So, yeah, the suitors in the parade, I feel like they deserve to poodle.
What do you feel that Anthrocon could do to alleviate these concerns?
I feel as though Anthrocon should either just accept having a longer parade, or maybe make multiple parades for different days.
Ultimately, I do think there should be some type of ADA exception here, as there are with most events, but given the sheer amount of poodlers at Anthrocon 2024's parade, certainly not all of them would be unable to at least wear a set of Under Armour. End of the day, use your own discretion here. Don't kill yourself to be in the parade. Know your own limits. There are a lot of other photo and video opportunities at cons. For example,
more likely to give her a curb job than a blow job or a block party.
In a world where the fursuit parade is being essentially sent the way of the A-Drive and replaced with scheduled gatherings, Anthrocon is the exception, where there is an event run in conjunction with the parade, rather directly after the parade, and that's the block party. Other conventions have fully replaced the parade with some sort of designated fursuit social gathering, but this one's unique in that it takes up the entire art district of Pittsburgh. And this one, y'all, no fursuit is required, no wardrobe standards. I mean, as long as it's within the code of conduct. I mean, please don't come out here wearing a Confederate flag or anything. Can't make the parade? Go to this instead. There's your solution. Sorry I don't have a more satisfying answer to this, but at least you ain't gotta stand around for 4 hours for this one, so that sweetens the deal, I guess.
Taking a chance, this could be different.
When you look at the snowballing growth of our fandom, especially in the last 10 years, it becomes apparent that certain things are just not sustainable. For example, the parade. But with cons growing at such a rate, it's bound to get the mainstream's attention. Anthrocon has become one of the largest draws to Pittsburgh, and with so many younger people joining the furry fandom, more and more Generation X and baby boomers, who are their parents, are becoming aware of it as well. And with more eyes comes more magnifying glasses, those trying to figure out what to make of us from their own lens of morality, and a lot of folks, both in and out, have tried to sanitize certain areas of the fandom, encouraging influence from their own moral compass. This comes in the restriction of fetish gear from public spaces, the banning of minors from conventions, and stupid online debates regarding where morality lines should be drawn in one's own fantasies and indulgencies. But an outsider's lens into our world has always been set on, more than any other facet or event, Anthrocon. There is no secret that, as Anthrocon is such a public-facing event, that it certainly must come up in their staff meetings how Anthrocon wishes to brand itself in the public eye. I can tell you that most cons have meetings about this kind of stuff, it's not new. The Anthrocon parade being the largest public draw for any furry event in the world certainly influences what Anthrocon wishes the public to see, and you can probably connect the dots to what I'm getting at here. Low or no standards equals a bad public image. Now, I do not wish to indulge peering YouTube essay viewer eyes in a fandom culture conundrum that would be harder to word for sake of my own reputation than legalese. So let me instead bring up a comparison that I think would be much easier to explain. Punk rock. Partial credit here for research by one of my favorite YouTube essayists, Todd in the Shadows. Punk started in the 60s as a rebellious movement that was loud, offensive, and subverted social norms, questioned standards, and it was very niche for that reason. But as time went on, this small niche grew into a full-blown movement by the 80s.
Should I stay or should I go now?
Then in the 90s and early 2000s, some acts came about that bridged the more approachable alternative rock movement with punk and created a new sound. Something that was less about subverting the expectations of society and instead about rebelling against mom and dad for being overbearing or being sad because your girlfriend left. It was more marketable for this reason though. And this is where punk, or pop punk as it were, became seen as a respectable genre of music to the mainstream eye. You know, sad poetry you can relate to with a little bit of screaming and catchy guitar riffs without all those pesky lyrics about the death of Cambodian dictators and whatnot. And those who became part of the punk scene were less wanting to tear down the system and more just use it as an aesthetic. And while you can say that aesthetic cheapened it in a way, this aesthetic became the iconic style of the 2000s. It influenced our very culture, and after its moment, it lived on, forming different subgenres, some drawing inspiration from the old, some from the new, but all unique and part of the greater punk landscape. Now, of course, I don't want the enshittification of furry for us to find progress. I want it to stay a little weird. I want creativity to be celebrated, even if the talent is still developing. And this is why I beg, do not let the entry to the Anthrocon parade become an audition. But I also beg its participants, put just a tiny bit of effort into your character. The fursuit parade is more for the crowd it draws than it is for you. No crowd, no parade. The crowd is what makes the parade. A Maskimal's head by itself is not a fursuit. A partial with a distinct wardrobe and a tiny bit of skin showing as an aesthetic choice, that is. This is not a fursuit, this is. Make it a goal, something to work for, a dream to chase. At the same time, all of this though has been expected. There's no way that the fandom, at its current growth rate, is sustainable in the way it's been run for decades. And change is inevitable. It's so easy now to visit the dealer's den and buy a head and paws and bam, you're in the parade. Fursuits are more accessible than they ever were. Yeah, maybe they're not cheap, but they are accessible. But the sad thing is, it's not that simple anymore. It can't be. And that's because the fandom's sheer scale is not sustainable. People are going to, unfortunately, have to be excluded. And that's okay. You will have your chance. Everyone should get their moment. It just might be a little harder than it used to be because we're not a small group anymore. But trust me, it'll be worth the wait. I'll say, I came into this essay mostly siding against Anthrocon, but I think most of my stances against it aren't what's being said in plain text, it's just what's been omitted, or what could be said in the future. After writing this, I wouldn't say I'm against it entirely, but I would say that Anthrocon is walking a very fine line here. I made this so that you can draw your own conclusions from as little bias as possible and balancing the arguments from both sides. Definitely express your opinion, but please also understand con staff are volunteers who work to give you some of the magic that the fandom gave to them. Please be respectful to them. Well, this certainly was not what I was expecting. I was originally going to make this a short, but well, here we are 3,600 words later. I guess I'm still on hiatus, but I'm going to start picking things up here in about a month. So hey, definitely check out my Patreon. You get to see all these essays up to 2 days early over there, or become a channel member here for those cute little emotes you can use during premieres. If you can't swing a monthly fee, just leave a tip. Tip info is in the description, and if you can't financially contribute, no problem. Just drop a like, comment, and subscribe for more, hopefully less contentious videos. And until next time, take it wheezy.